husband's best friend had a crush on my husband. She excluded me from all her party and ruined her own life. It might be bad of me to say, my husband shouldn't attend a birthday party I wasn't invited to, but I need to share my side of the story. My husband's best friend, Sophie, has always been cold toward me. She doesn't say anything outright, but her actions are so petty and bizarre. If I'd done something to warrant it, I'd own up to it. But I haven't. She's been standoffish since day one. The first time I met her, she called me a temporary girlfriend of my husband. Still, she was invited to our wedding. I make an effort to be cordial, but beyond that, I don't care much anymore. Her exclusion of me from things has become a pattern. Last Christmas, my husband's gift from her was a rock climbing certificate, and she'd already picked a date and group of friends to go with, except me. She also travels often and buys him gifts, sending them with a note addressed only to him. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. She's not horrible, but undeniably rude. By the way, it's pretty obvious Sophie has a thing for my husband. I know he'd never cheat, so I'm not worried about that. But it doesn't make her behavior any less odd. Things came to a head last week when my husband told me Sophie was planning a small birthday dinner with just close friends and I wasn't invited. She made it very clear. Later, it came out that what was supposed to be an intimate dinner had turned into a house party with over 50 people invited. And the Facebook invite even says it's an open invite. That's when I'd had enough. I told my husband I didn't think he should go. It had crossed the line into blatant disrespect. To his credit, my husband agreed with me, but he was really upset because they've been friends since childhood, and he didn't want to hurt her. I told him I didn't have much sympathy though. If their friendship couldn't handle this, then it wasn't much of a friendship. He asked if he could take her out for drinks, just the two of them, to celebrate, but I wasn't thrilled about it. I told him he's an adult and can do whatever he wants, but it felt pretty messed up. Finally, he suggested we sit down and talk with Sophie so we could all take accountability. I agreed, but I said I wouldn't apologize unless she could point to something specific I'd done to deserve her treatment. I've been nothing but nice to her despite her repeatedly being disrespectful. Reddit comments. Honestly, what's going on with your husband? If one of my friends was doing this to my wife, I'd have a serious talk with them. He seems to be prioritizing this friendship over your feelings. I'm disappointed, and honestly, it's a sad situation. But at the end of the day, it's her decision, and I won't be going to the party. After this, I'll definitely have to rethink the friendship. But your husband is really trying to please someone who's disrespecting you. He sees it and acknowledges it, but it shouldn't have taken you feeling uncomfortable to bring it up. He should have addressed it much sooner, especially when she called you temporary. That's when he should have stepped up and told her to respect his partner, but he didn't. So now it's time to have a serious discussion with him about boundaries. The grown-up, mature response from your husband would be for both of you to skip the party, and that's that. But if I'm being honest, here's what I would do. Since it's an open invite on Facebook, I'd show up with my husband. What's she going to do? Kick me out? It'll make her look bad, and if anything, I'd call her out and see what happens. Maybe it's just my bold mood today, but I'd go. You need to talk to your husband and maybe even show up at the party. What do you think of this whole situation? What's your judgment? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's take a look at the community's reactions. Community comments. Confused Cochin says, I think Grace loves the attention. If your husband's smart, he'll pull back. I find it concerning that he wanted to take her out one-on-one. To make up for not going to the party, he should be more protective of his marriage. Op responds, I get how it sounds, but Grace is very dramatic. I think he wanted to avoid a blow-up with their friend group. I understand his fear of conflict, but at some point, they all need to grow up. BH12 says, you said she has a crush on my husband. I trust him. He would never cheat. If you only knew how many men who say they'd never cheat end up doing it. Often it starts with poor boundaries, like letting a woman with a crush exclude you from things. Op responds, we're in marriage counseling more for maintenance than conflict. I'm not naive, but I trust him. We have a strong relationship, and honestly, he's more annoyed with her. Ops edit. For the record, my husband is a great person. He's always said he'd choose me over her and even over his childhood friends. I never pushed it because I don't mind much. I'm confident he'll do the right thing if I ask. I just want to make sure I'm asking for the right reasons. He's reading these responses, and they've been helpful. I can see the situation more clearly from the outside, but he's been tangled in it for so long that it's good for him to see how childish she's acting. Sometimes a Reddit wake-up call is needed. The community agrees that a serious conversation with her husband about boundaries is necessary, despite some concerns about possible cheating. Up continues to defend her husband, stating that she trusts him. Now, we're moving on to the update to see how this story unfolds. I don't expect anyone to read all of this, but honestly, I wasn't sure which part of the drama to leave out. I'm still struggling to process everything. Well, you all called it there was no infidelity, but not from my husband. First off, my husband is not a bad guy, despite what some may think. This situation is one of his biggest blind spots, but we do have a really wonderful life and marriage. I honestly believed we both messed up by letting a toxic person manipulate us with her anger. It all happened so gradually that neither of us realized how crazy things had become. So, I'll say this is one of those rare moments where Reddit actually helped our relationship. Now, I'm going to address the birthday girl, Emily, to clear up a few things. Emily has been in my husband's life since grade school. Their entire friend group has been close since childhood, and they mean a lot to him. I'll always respect them for helping him through some tough times. Yes, even Emily. I should also mention that they survived a tragedy together as kids, which created a level of trauma bonding with this group. Sometimes it's a little unhealthy, but aside from Emily, I really like all of them individually. To be honest, I've always felt that my husband didn't care for Emily very much, but he didn't want to lose his friends. When someone in their group has an issue with Emily, she blows up on all of them, making everyone miserable. It's gotten really bad in the past. She always claims to have a mental health crisis and manipulates conflicts, so she's always the victim. Everyone in her life, including my husband, is a textbook people pleaser, which I'm fairly certain is by design. I also want to clarify that my husband and Emily have never been romantic, which was a common theory in my last post. She calls him her best friend, but their relationship is pretty dependent on the group dynamics and her constant drama. Everyone on Reddit was really concerned about her possibly having a crush on him, because it opens up the possibility of cheating. Let me be clear, he's super attractive and could easily find a willing partner if he wanted to cheat. But I trust the person I'm married to. Also, I didn't want to mention this before, but in all honesty, Emily isn't very attractive, and he definitely doesn't feel any attraction to her. Anyway, my husband and I had a long talk and agreed that the situation was no longer sustainable. Even if it meant losing his friends, no amount of disrespect was worth it. He apologized a lot for letting it get this far. Alright, on to the drama. There's another girl in his friend group. Let's call her Laura. I've always really liked her, so we invited her and her husband over for dinner. About halfway through the meal, my husband brought up the issue with Emily not inviting me to her party and how I've been excluded so many times over the years. Laura looked completely dumbfounded and said, well, it wouldn't have mattered if you were invited anyway, because you refused to be in the same room as Emily, right? You'd be angry. I've never ever said anything like that to anyone. We pushed her to elaborate, and to make a long story short, Laura explained that Emily had told some people in the group years ago that it was too painful for me to be around her because of the connection she had with my husband. Again, these two have never kissed, and I always got the feeling that Emily annoyed him. She instructed everyone to stop inviting me to places, so they wouldn't offend me by making me turn them down. She had even told the group not to bring it up with my husband because it was such a sensitive issue. Apparently, for years, she'd been spreading the story that I became upset whenever I received an invite because I found it disrespectful, which supposedly led to a huge rift in my marriage. The rest of the group found it odd but didn't want to make waves, so they just let it go. In hindsight, it all makes sense. We'd often been invited to smaller events or gatherings when Emily was away, and I couldn't shake the feeling that either everyone was an incredible actor or something else was going on. Everyone, except Emily, had always been very kind to me. The truth came out when two other members of the group later confirmed the same story and apologized. I also saw Laura texting Emily while we were sitting at the table. When Laura asked why I wasn't invited to Emily's party, Emily replied, "You know how difficult it is for her to be around me. I hope one day we can all be in the same room together without it being awkward. But we need to respect that she doesn't want to hang out with us." Laura was furious, and my husband was beyond livid. He called Emily on speakerphone and asked her where she got the idea that I was intimidated by their connection. Emily kept denying it, insisting that Laura must be mistaken or lying. That's when Laura spoke up, and Emily realized she was on speakerphone with Laura present. Emily immediately yelled at them for tricking her and launched into a tirade about how she didn't deserve to be attacked. Then, she hung up. Emily then sent Laura nearly 19 text messages while she was still at our house, accusing her of betrayal. She also texted Laura's husband, making an awful comment about how it felt to be married to a drug addict, referencing something Laura did in college that she regrets. That was a low blow. She then sent my husband a message, begging him not to believe anything Laura said because Laura was blinded by jealousy. We all threw up our hands and left. I thought that was the worst of it, but later, Laura and my husband had a little too much to drink and spent an hour venting their frustrations. Much came out during that conversation about how much trouble Emily had caused over the years and how controlling she always was. I sat there, popcorn in hand, amazed by how much worse she was than I'd ever realized. Laura declared that she was done with Emily but hinted that things could escalate. I thought she just meant Emily would be dramatic, but now I see how naive I was. The next day, Laura told the group there wasn't an official vote to kick Emily out, but let's just say no one fought to keep her. Apparently, Emily had caused many problems over the years. Since then, she's completely lost it. She called my husband 36 times in just 2 hours. She showed up at one of their friends' houses and tried to break down the door. She even threatened to call the police on a girl in the group for not returning a $40 bracelet. At this point, the group and I started a chat where we shared updates every hour on the texts and social media posts Emily was sending. Her messages were becoming more unhinged and abusive. Most of the insults were empty, but some were so hurtful they made me tear up. I had to unfollow her on Instagram because I was embarrassed by all her passive-aggressive posts about her fake friends. She sent several vague threats that I didn't take too seriously, but as expected, she also sent me a series of incoherent texts. I was somewhat entertained by the fact that the worst thing she could say about me was that I was career-obsessed. She also made a vile comment about a condition I have, which affects my ability to process certain social cues. I won't repeat it, but I did screenshot it and send it to the group before blocking her. I felt sorry for some of the things she sent to my husband. He struggled to block her because, despite everything, he genuinely worried about her safety. He's a kind person, and at one point, he handed me his phone, asking me to tell him if we needed to call the police for a wellness check. The texts were difficult to read, especially since she manipulated his insecurities. She ranted about how she'd been friends with him when he was still a loser virgin and claimed it was only a matter of time before I left him. She even told him that he deserved to have been cheated on in college and that I was probably cheating on him now. Finally, she tried to emotionally manipulate him by bringing up a friend of his who had passed away, hoping to get him to respond. We agreed to block her on every platform. She's way crazier than I ever imagined. Honestly, there was a moment where I considered getting a restraining order. I know this is a lot more drama than you probably wanted, but she tried to break up 2 other couples in the group by exposing infidelities. Someone in the comments suggested that maybe she had something on these guys, keeping them around. I always thought they were just conflict avoidant, like my husband, and feared a meltdown. The first couple wasn't a big deal. I didn't know this about them, but apparently they're open. His wife already knew, and when Emily tried to bring it up, she basically laughed at her and called her delusional. It was satisfying to watch Emily flip out when that didn't go the way she expected. The second couple was much sadder. Emily and one of the guys never actually had sex, but they drunkenly fooled around a couple of times months after he started dating his now wife. It was heart-wrenching, especially because I really liked them as a couple. Cheating is never okay, but he's grown since then. I hope they work through it, but I don't know if they will. The worst part was Emily's reaction. She posted all about it on social media, making sure everyone knew about the affair. We haven't heard much from them since, and it's honestly been the hardest part of this whole mess. Then, Emily threatened to release old photos of everyone from high school. There was nothing truly life-ruining, but definitely things they wouldn't want public. The only thing saving them is that everyone was underage in those photos, and some of them were quite sexual with partial nudity. It's weird that she kept them. I'm a lawyer, so I helped the group craft a message about the consequences of distributing explicit images of minors. I hope this issue fades away, but if she does post them, it won't be the end of the world. Most people won't care that a group of 30-year-olds did drugs and hooked up as teens, but it still sucks they have to deal with it. I knew she had some issues, but this took her to a whole new level of crazy. This all unfolded in just a few days. She claimed to care about these people like family last weekend, and now she's blackmailing them. It's hard to call this a happy ending, because this woman needs help more than anything, and she's caused real damage. That said, I have a hard time feeling sympathy. She spent years manipulating people, especially me, and was so calculating in her attempts to push me out. If I'm being honest, she still scares me. It's only been a few days, but the damage has already been done, and I'm worried about what she'll do next. I'm also concerned that this behavior was hidden under the surface all this time and no one saw it coming. It's just a mess. On the bright side, I've always had my own circle of friends, so I wasn't exactly desperate to be included. But I do feel like I'm meeting my husband's friends for the first time, and it's been nice. I'm still a little hesitant because I spent so many years thinking they disliked me, and this whole situation has left me with some emotional whiplash. But I appreciate their efforts, and this ordeal has helped me understand them better. The women in their group added me to a text chain they've had for years, and I love their banter. We're going to dinner with another couple this week, and I even got invited to one of the girls' wedding showers. Since all this drama went down, everyone has genuinely seemed much happier, despite the pain it caused. As for my husband and me, we're in a good place. We're planning to talk about everything with our therapist, but we've made a commitment to never let toxic people come between us again. There's probably a moral somewhere in all this, but I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's about the importance of transparency and setting boundaries in all relationships, including friendships. While this might sound harsh, I do think of this as a positive update for me, my husband, and the friends who've stuck around. Emily, though, she still needs help. Thank you all for reading and sharing your thoughts. I know this was a long one, but I appreciate it. For those who enjoyed the story, here are a couple more you might like. If you're short on time, save them for later. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.